Scene: a sprawling suburban house in Austin, Texas, decked out for a 4th of July barbecue. The backyard is alive with string lights, a smoking grill, and a long table piled with ribs, coleslaw, and cornbread. Family and neighbors mill around, laughing, clinking beers. At the edge of the table, Sarah, 29, sits quietly, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. She's been gone from family events for 3 years. A sleek silver Audi idles in the driveway, unnoticed. I used to think I was broken. Like if I could just fix myself, talk louder, laugh easier, be less me, Dad would see me. But no matter what I did, I was invisible. My brothers, Luke and Cody, they were his pride, his legacy. I was just the daughter who didn't fit. Dad, Greg, wasn't a shouter. He didn't need to be. His silence cut deeper than any words. When I was 10, I won a school art contest. My painting hung in the city hall for a month. I ran home, beaming, and showed him the certificate. He glanced at it, said, "That's nice," and went back to fixing his truck. That same day, Luke aced a math quiz he'd been flunking, and Dad took him out for burgers, just the two of them. By 13, I got it. Luke was the golden boy, always tinkering with gadgets, building stuff in the garage with Dad. They'd spend hours out there, laughing, grease on their hands. Cody was the athlete, basketball star, every game packed with scouts. Dad was front row every time, hollering like a coach. Me? I was the weird one, always sketching in my room, writing poems nobody read. Mom tried to soften it. She'd slip into my room, hug me, say, "You're my artist, Sarah." But even she knew the score. If Cody needed new sneakers, Dad paid up, no questions. When I asked for a new sketch pad, he sighed. "What's the point? You'll move on to something else." Family dinners were the worst. Dad would grill Luke about his latest project, Cody about his next game. I'd sit there, picking at my food, waiting for a gap to mention my day. If I spoke, I'd get a nod, maybe a grunt, before Dad turned back to the boys. I learned to stay quiet, to fade into the background. But something was building inside me. Not just hurt, but fire. I wasn't going to beg for his love anymore. I was going to make him see me, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. I threw myself into school, not for him, but for me. I stayed up late, studying, sketching, coding. I taught myself how to build apps. Started small, just side projects for classmates. By high school, I was winning coding competitions, quiet ones nobody in the family noticed. I got a scholarship to a tech program in college, moved out, and didn't look back. Dad didn't even come to my graduation. He was at Cody's state championship. I told myself it didn't matter. I was building something bigger than his approval. After college, I started a company. Nothing flashy, just a platform that helped small businesses streamline their supply chains. It was mine. Every line of code, every sleepless night, every rejection from investors who didn't think a 23-year-old woman could pull it off. I lived in a cramped studio, ate ramen for months, took freelance gigs to keep the lights on. Some nights, I'd scroll through Instagram, see Luke posing with Dad at a car show, Cody with another trophy, captions about family pride. It stung, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. My company was my proof, my way of saying, I'm enough. 3 years ago, I stopped going home. No more awkward holiday dinners, no more pretending I belonged. I poured everything into my work. The company grew, slowly at first, then fast. We landed major clients, got a write-up in a tech magazine. I hired a team, people like me who knew what it felt like to be overlooked. We built something real, something that mattered. I moved into a sleek loft downtown, bought my first car, a silver Audi that purred like a promise. I didn't tell the family. They didn't ask. This year, I decided to go back. Not to fit in, not to prove anything to them, but to close a chapter. I RSVP'd to the 4th of July barbecue in the family group chat. No explanation, just, I'll be there. The replies were a mix of thumbs-up emojis and silence. I could feel their confusion through the screen. The night before, I stood in a dealership, signing papers for the Audi under a new last name I'd legally changed after starting my company. They wouldn't know it. They never asked who I was becoming. In my bag was a slim gray envelope, the paper thick, expensive. Inside, a single document that would shift everything. I dressed carefully that morning. Tailored blazer, sharp heels. Not to impress, but to remind myself who I was. When I pulled into the driveway, the Audi's engine hummed, drawing a few curious glances from neighbors. Inside, the party was in full swing. Luke was tossing a football with Cody in the yard, Dad manning the grill, a beer in hand. Grinning like the king of the block, Mom fluttered around, setting out plates, her smile tight. I stepped onto the patio, and the air shifted. Heads turned. Dad's eyes flicked to me, surprise breaking his usual smirk. "Well, damn, Sarah. Didn't think you'd show." The crowd chuckled, a few cousins nodding like I was some prodigal daughter. I smiled, polite but cool. "Happy 4th, Dad." I took a seat at the table, the gray envelope tucked in my bag, the car keys heavy in my pocket. Dinner was the same old script. Luke bragged about his new startup, some app that sounded like a knockoff of mine. Cody flexed about a coaching gig he'd landed. Dad soaked it up, nodding, laughing, slapping their backs. I sat quietly, sipping iced tea, watching. Mom tried to pull me in, asking, "Sarah, how's work?" I started to answer, but Dad cut in. "Luke, tell us about that investor call." The table laughed, moved on. I didn't push. I waited. Then it came. Dad raised his glass, his voice booming. "I'm proud of my boys. Luke, Cody, you're killing it. Real men building something." He paused, glanced at me and grinned, like he was about to land a punchline. "And then there's Sarah, still doing her little art thing, right? The oddball." The table roared. Luke spit out his beer. Cody banged his fist, laughing. Neighbors joined in, like it was a running joke. I didn't move. My hands stayed folded, my face blank. I let the laughter die. Then I stood, slow, deliberate. The table hushed. "I brought you something, Dad." I reached into my bag, pulled out the gray envelope, and walked to him. The patio went silent, every eye on me. I set the envelope in front of him, right next to his plate. "Happy 4th." He frowned, picking it up. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, stepping back, arms crossed. He tore it open, pulling out the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and his grin vanished. His face went slack, then pale. His hand trembled, the paper crinkling. Luke leaned over. "Dad, what is it?" Cody stood, trying to peek. The neighbor shifted, whispering. Dad's voice was low, shaky. This isn't possible." I tilted my head, voice steady. "It's real. You know that company you've been with for 20 years? Horizon Logistics? I bought it. Silent acquisition, finalized last week." I paused, letting the words land. "I'm not the oddball, Dad. I'm the one who owns your job now." The silence was heavy, like the air before a storm. Luke's mouth hung open. Cody dropped back into his chair, his beer forgotten. Mom's hand froze on a pitcher, her eyes wide. Dad stared at the paper, A legal document proving my company now controlled his whole career, his pride, his identity, all under my name. I nodded toward the driveway. That car out front, part of the deal, but it's mine. I'm taking it. I turned, walked off the patio, and slid into the Audi. The engine roared to life, smooth and sharp. As I pulled away, Dad's voice broke through the open door. A raw, panicked shout. Not anger. Fear. I didn't look back. The house shrank in the rear view, the lights blurring into the dusk. Back at the table, I knew what was happening. Dad was still clutching the paper, his hands shaking, his eyes darting over the words like he could will them away. Luke was up, pacing, voice cracking. "Dad, what's going on? Is this for real?" Cody grabbed the document, scanning it, his face twisting. "She can't. She's not. How?" Dad didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his breath shallow. The neighbors were whispering, the party crumbling into awkward glances. Mom stood frozen, a tray of cornbread in her hands, her eyes locked on the spot where I'd stood. Luke slammed a fist on the table. "How the hell did she do this? She's nobody. We're the ones who..." "She's not nobody." Dad cut in, his voice barely a whisper. "She's everything." The words hum there, heavy, final. Cody blinked, his confidence gone. "What do you mean? How did she pull this off?" The truth settled over them like dust. Luke and Cody, who'd always been the stars, were staring at a reality they couldn't grasp. They'd never seen me, not really. To them, I was the quiet sister, the one who didn't matter. But I'd been building, working, growing in the shadows they ignored. And now, everything they leaned on, Dad's job, his status, their world, was mine. Dad's voice broke again. "She owns it all. The company, my position, everything I built." Luke staggered back, his face red. "When did this happen? Why didn't we know?" Dad shook his head. "She didn't want us to know. She didn't need to." Cody tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "What, so she's some big shot now? She can't just..." "She already did," Dad said, his voice cold, final. The party was over. Neighbors slipped away, murmuring. Mom set the tray down, her hands trembling, and sank into a chair. The backyard, once loud with celebration, was now a graveyard of their old hierarchy. I drove on, the city lights stretching out ahead. The weight I'd carried for years, the need to be seen, to be enough, lifted. I didn't do this for them. I did it for the girl who used to cry herself to sleep, wondering why she wasn't enough. I did it for the woman I'd become, the one who didn't need their applause to shine. My phone buzzed, texts, calls, chaos from the family. I didn't answer. They'd sit there all night, staring at that paper, trying to undo what I'd done. Dad would replay every dismissal, every smirk, every time he called me the oddball. Luke and Cody would scramble, their egos bruised, their world tilted. But it was too late. I pulled into my loft's garage, the Audi's engine fading to a hum. I stepped out, my heels clicking on the concrete, and caught my reflection in the glass door. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I saw a woman who'd fought, built, won. Not for them, but for herself. And that was enough.